We're today's news talk, The World Today.
I'm looking forward to this. When Jen told me that we had Matthew McWhorter on, author of Canon Crossfire, I thought, beauty, this will be a magnificent conversation. And it really, it's not just about religion. It's about how the West behaves itself, how America behaves itself. And so first of all, I just got to welcome our guest, Matthew McWhorter, author of Canon Crossfire. Thank you very much for joining me, sir.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we just got whacked by YouTube. I mean, the censorship is just, I mean, there's no reason to do that.
I honestly had very little understanding of what was going on until I tried to publish my book and try to advertise it. And the most innocuous stuff is being banned. And when I asked their teams, in my case, it's mostly Twitter, ask them what's going on. They can't even explain it. They don't even, or at least they won't provide me with an explanation. But it's they suggested there's a particular author who was making a claim, and I said, well, I can prove he's wrong. And the answers I got was, well, if I want the ad to run, I had to make it into more of a personal attack, which I just refused to do, or to attack a book he hadn't written. But to actually talk about the substance was banned. Anyway, it's just very crazy. They're not logical rules. They don't make any sense anymore.
It's incredible. They're saying that Dr. Richard Bowles doesn't know what he's talking about. And all he's talking about is autism. Now, I wonder what's hot at autism and Tylenol. And he says there's evidence for, and there's evidence that, there is no evidence that it does you damage, and there's no evidence that it doesn't hurt you. And that's what they've said all along. But I'm just wondering, do you think it's the Donald Trump syndrome here, that anything Donald Trump says and anybody that repeats it, they're going to be knocked on the head? Not that I would say that.
Definitely with the Tylenol thing. I mean, at least from what I'm seeing, that is a pure personal reaction. You got a lot of people who aren't doctors and have never read a study in their life telling you what's going on.
It's incredible, though. We just our history. We used to approach topics with honesty, and we got smacked on the head from everybody at one stage because we weren't playing games. We just wanted to report the news, and we were a very, very large organisation. So interesting life, isn't it? But yeah. Your book, Canon Crossfire. Tell me, first of all, we're just talking about YouTube and the censoring, which gets to I think also to the root of our problems globally, especially in the West, that we talk about free speech and democracy, but if anyone has an alternate view, free speech goes out the window, doesn't it? And that's not just for the left; it's both sides. Yeah. Where have we gone wrong? Where has the art of communicating disappeared to?
I think part of it, to be honest, is they seem to think that corporations have more of a right to freedom of speech than we, the individual. So you're, as an individual, trying to get your voice out there. And you have Twitter basically saying, we refuse to carry your voice, or, what YouTube, in your case, refusing to carry your voice. Like, what is that? It's your job to get voices out there and get them heard. I think we've lost a spirit of freedom of speech more than anything.
Yeah, I think, and if you look at COVID, and there's been enormous evidence to demonstrate that they didn't do their homework. They rushed out a thing that they had no idea what it would do. But to stop that discussion between scientists and doctors, which is what is required, especially with new technology, anybody that said anything against the narrative were labelled all sorts of terrible things. And that's the basis for science, is to have that discussion. And I think if society needs to move forward, we also need to have discussions, talk about things. And that's America great. When I used to live there, I went there because I loved the get up and go attitude, roll up your sleeves. You're going to have the support of just about everybody because you're doing something for yourself and for everybody around you, and you're going to work hard. And then you'd have discussions, whether it's political or football, which is probably more dangerous than political, or religious. But when you finished discussing it, it was finished. There was generally no hard feelings or issues. And nowadays, I see that whether it's religion or whether it's politics or sport, but generally the feeling it's become a crusade almost a cult, and they have to defend it till they die. Do you find the same thing? That, I mean, just for example, your book Canon Crossfire, I'm sure there's been people out there that have said scurrilous things about you, or wanted to take it to heart instead of using it as a piece to have a discussion to further our betterment.
Even just friends who just won't talk to you anymore, just moved on. And I didn't like, it wasn't like I annoyed them with my presentation or anything. They just found out I wrote a book, and that was the end. It's a weird culture, and I personally, I was going through a transition from being a full-time lawyer, where lawyers do nothing but argue, and going out into the regular world with regular people as a retiree. And I thought maybe that was what I was seeing, was that I was going from an environment where lawyers are used to these sorts of things to people who aren't used to it. And anymore, I don't think that's really what I was seeing. That just happened to be a coincidence. It's really just a cultural shift that has occurred to sort of an absolute view that if somebody disagrees with you, that's the end of the world, and you have to win every argument. And just the ability to just let things go just does not seem to be there anymore. I don't know where that came from, and I don't know how it'll go away, but it is a problem.
Christianity, it's how the West was built,
Yeah.
and it's simple as that. If I'm just going to discuss an issue that came up in the UK, which is still, they speak differently, but they're still the West. Well, they are slowly moving or quickly moving away from the philosophies of our parents and you and I and our grandparents of what the West is or was. And this mother had this, doing a video of a child who was probably 5 years old, had just come home from school and said, "What did you learn at school? Did you learn about God?" Which you would think you would learn in a Western civilization, in a Western country such as the UK. And the child, 5 years old, said, "No, it is Allah. Allah created everything," and then went on. And the mother said, "I'm sorry, but it's not Allah. It's Allah." And this is a 5-year-old child. Do you find, though, just moving globally, do you find that the move, and there is a move away from Christianity, and a lot of times you can't, the church can be to blame. I'm a Catholic, and the church is made up of human beings. It makes human mistakes. But the idea that there is still, somebody up there, the big boss, that holds firm. It's just that the people below him are human. Do you find that the move away from Christianity is part of the disassembling of what we're seeing of the West?
I absolutely do. And this is something that came to me as I was converting to Christianity and ultimately Catholicism, was the realization that people who believe that the other guy has a soul have a reason to keep talking to the guy. Whereas somebody who doesn't think you have a soul, and they just see you as an obstacle. And I think that is part of, even on the free speech and other elements of how our society are breaking down, is just we're losing that cultural focus that came with Christendom of individuals as souls, as worthy of respect, as worthy of life even. And I think it definitely is playing a part of it. I also find, again, because how I came to Christianity, I think a lot of people don't realize how much comes from Christianity, and how much, like, even an American or Australian atheist is internalizing Christian things without realizing it. But I mean, you have a very different discussion with a Western atheist than, say, a Chinese atheist, right? And they don't even appreciate where that comes from and why it is, and why we need to defend it if we're going to keep our civilization. So
I totally agree. You were an atheist. I mean, I always think that Christianity, even though it's written into the law of the moral compass, or the compass, that's right, that's wrong, that's left, that's right. As an atheist, and I have friends who are atheists, and I think they're very good people. And there is a God, and God will say, "Well, you're not perfect, but you're a very good person." I do think that if someone's an atheist or believes in any other religion, and as a Catholic and as a Christian, we believe there is one God. But it doesn't mean that he's going to, if a person lives a very good life and does good, and so forth, I do believe that person will go to heaven, if you believe in a heaven, into an afterlife. Do you believe the same thing, or do you? Because I know a lot of Catholics. When I went to school, we were told that if we had Protestant friends, we would go to hell. And it's the same thing if you had, in my days, there was no such thing as an atheist because you had to believe in something, otherwise you get whacked around the head. But nowadays, there's an enormous amount of atheists out there, or people that don't really understand or believe in nature, or or have other religions. But do you also believe that those atheists would if we believe in a God, that they'll also go to another better afterlife?
Certainly, I hope so. I had major medical problems at the time that ultimately led me to come up with a bucket list that led me to read the books I was named after, Matthew,
Mm.
Mark, McWhorter, and that led me on my Christian journey. But I often wonder, well, gee, if I had been in the 99% that would have died rather than the 1% who got lucky, where would I be? But that is something I wonder. But I find, at least with my own journey and people I've talked to, that atheism is very shallow, that people haven't really thought things out, and I imagine God will generally be pretty understanding of most of that.
Mm.
You should think about it, but if you haven't, well, he'll understand.
Do you find also this day and age, because of that lack of something religious such as God, that they look for other things such as look at climate change? I mean, there's an example: climate change. They
They look for their own crusade.
Yes.
Yeah,
And someone else said that if they didn't have God in their life, then the only God they have is themselves. And at times that can be a bad thing too.
oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think people find they're trying to make meaning when they are at least philosophically claiming there is no meaning, right? So they're
Mm.
trying to make their meaning out of climate change or some other obsession that they have,
Mm.
and trying to develop it. But their actual technical doctrine, as we would call it, is that there is no meaning. Your entire life just amounts to moving chemicals from one spot to another, and then you die, and nothing's remembered, nothing occurs.
Mm.
I Like I said, I think most people are just very shallow on these things, and it ends up being more of an emotional thing, and that's why the emotional attachment that they're not finding to God and to reality comes to something that is an idol, basically,
Mm.
like issues of climate change or something else.
We had we were, as I said, we were a very large organisation
Mhm.
until we got to the cyclone from within. But we were around when October 6 or 7, depends which part of the world you're in, occurred, and then Israel then went after Gaza and the Palestinians. And my concern is, and still is the killing of innocent people. The thought of a child being terrorised for no reason except that somebody wants to kill that child, or the loud explosions which scare people and children, and then kill the parents and so forth. Anyway, I said to one of the guys that worked for us, I said, who's a Christian. He brags about it and talks about it, and he's very proud of it. That's fantastic. I said, isn't it terrible? He said, no, that's just collateral damage. I said, but you can't, if you're a Christian, that's against the basic
Yeah,
principle. And
it's against everything.
but it is so. But let's just move one step forward. Look at the US. Look at your government. I mean, Donald Trump. I believe is a pretty good guy. He believes in God, and so does the cabinet, and da 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 da. But they haven't got a whole lot of. They're not backward in coming forward when they want to bomb particular areas and kill particular people. And I find that I can understand. Well, I can understand the illogical logic, but I find that disturbing in the fact that they go to church and uphold the Ten Commandments and then haven't got an issue killing people. And I just don't understand that. Whereas you look at Israel, take away the politics of it, it needs to stop at the moment. And I don't see a whole lot of that happening. You look at Ukraine. I don't mean to bring you in here, forget all the politics, but there is a lot of killing of people. And surely we should one turn the other cheek, as we're taught to, and at the same time should go after peace at all cost, not peace at destruction and at all cost.
Yeah, as a former international business lawyer traveling the world for 20 some years, constantly was in these conversations with Europeans, a couple of Australians in my life, etc., but talking to the same thing. It's an odd element of American culture that comes to this sort of going back to the Civil War and General uh, Bill Sherman saying war is hell and burning Atlanta and marching to the sea. There's this lack of concern that sometimes comes up, and it is shocking when you encounter it. And unfortunately, that is definitely one of Donald Trump's weaknesses: is this
But I
desire to
think
just
I
you
think
know,
it's the entire Western, well, actually,
yeah,
probably the world. But if you look at Moscow and Russia, they open three churches every week.
yeah.
I mean, and so I don't really see that happening in many other parts of the world. So for an evil bunch of people, they're, they're doing a pretty nice job within. So I just find the whole thing. My dad, he prosecuted the Catholic Church and the police force at one stage and everything. Anyway, he was he's in heaven now, but he was a very good policeman and a very good Catholic. And he used to just say and taught me that the boss upstairs is the boss. But we're all human and we do make mistakes. And he said there are a lot of hypocrites. Taught me there are a lot of hypocrites, even in religion, who again go to church Sunday, confession, whatever, and they go out and do some pretty horrific things. And I always find that disturbing. That sure, you see them at church and everything, but there's always the dark side. And I just, you know,
You wish it wasn't that way. You wish it wasn't that way, right?
but it is, and that's the way of the world. What motivated you to write Canon Crossfire?
So it really goes back to my transition from atheist to ultimately Catholic. But my name is Matthew Mark McWhorter, so I was named after the Bible, and I decided to give it a read. Like I said, just as a bucket list item originally, and I said, "Wow, there's more to these books than I expected." So I kept reading the whole Bible, and then started wondering whether or not it's true, and was reading those Case for Christ and Evidence That Demands a Verdict, famous books, at least here in the United States, explaining and defending Christianity as true. And just had an initial question. It's very early on in those books. They the books are presenting the evidence for Christianity, and very early on they will say, "Well, there were these other books that the Catholics say are accepted, but they weren't. There's not enough evidence for them." And I said, "Well, okay, let me see that evidence so that I can judge it for myself." And it kind of turned out that no one had really assembled that evidence all in one place for someone to read what all the fathers in the early church, the first 450 years, what did they say about these books? And they said thousands of things. I mean, over 450 years. And my research project was to find all that stuff, to analyze it for myself. And as I was doing that, I started realizing that I have to put this somewhere, whether it's on a website or in a book, for everybody else to be able to mooch off of my hard work and research, so that other people who want to know what did the fathers say about these books now have them. And the context of it is, and why I got into it as a lawyer. Protestants are making a slightly different case than Catholics or Orthodox who accept these books. For the Protestants, they're saying, come to Jesus. We have all this evidence showing that Christianity is true. But don't believe these other books. They don't have enough evidence. And as a skeptic or as an outsider, the question is, well, let me see that evidence and let me make a comparison between those two. And that is an element of the Protestant case that doesn't exist for other Christians. And it's something that they have to think about and wrestle with. And that's the point of my book, is to show people what the evidence is. And then I just leave it for the reader to, determine what they want to do with it. My own conclusion is that Christianity and these books are basically a package deal. And that's how I ended up ultimately becoming Catholic. But like I said, for the book purposes, I just leave that to the reader.
How did you feel? I mean, Timothy Shea, who's one of our presenters here, he stouch Catholic, and I mean, if he's watching at the moment, he'll be truly intrigued with this. How did you feel when you? Because my mum, she was a Protestant, and moved over to becoming a Catholic, and I can recall at that stage, she just seemed like there was a whole load lifted off her shoulders. How did you feel?
Similar. The whole come to Jesus and believing it was true was a wonderful, magical moment.
Mm.
but I didn't have a preference between churches. My grandfather had been Catholic. My mom had gone to Catholic schools, and as far as religion went, she pretty much taught me that she hated nuns, and otherwise we didn't pray, didn't read the Bible, didn't go to church. So I didn't hate Catholics, but I could have gone to any church, and in fact, most of my family ended up Protestant later in life. So I was indifferent as to which church it was, but I wanted to know which one I was supposed to be analyzing, which one might be true. So I made a decision there. But regardless, the come to Jesus moment that occurred with that is something I'll never forget. But just that
Mm.
relief, that belief that your sins are forgiven, and that there is a purpose to the universe and life and everything else. Like just that's it slowly dawned on me. But there is like one moment when it sort of okay, this is true, and
Mm.
moving
And you
forward.
avoided the terror of nuns because you converted
Exactly.
later in life.
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure when I decided that Catholicism was true, or when I was doing this research, etc. I don't think I had ever met a nun in my life. I don't believe I'd met a monk in my life, and
mm,
my only recollection of priests was doing these ceremonies as a kid, where I was told to just mumble my way through them. So I didn't really know anything, and it was kind of a anyway, when I talk to people about what happened to me, it seems to be that I'm unusual because there was no church and no person driving me. There was just me and a pile of books.
mm.
So
Wow.
kind of a
Yeah, I find I mean, I tell people that, it's all tongue in cheek. And I, by the way, used to love watching Dave Allen tell his Catholic jokes. They were hilarious. I'm sure God was having a bit of a chortle too. But I would say that at school, and tongue in cheek, of course, I'd say that would go to confession on Thursdays, church on Fridays, because I went to a Catholic school, and then church on Sundays. And then the rest of the week, I sinned like hell
yeah,
because I knew I'd be forgiven. Now, when I say sin like hell, it was like mumbling under my breath,
yeah,
and that was about it. And then you go to confession, and the other thing was, it's like, oh, I'm not going to tell him all those sins. So you say, for these and all my other sins, because you know that it takes in the whole lot of things that I don't want Father to know about. So but it's a very
I still
interesting.
feel sorry for the first priest that I confessed to because
Is he
I
recovered?
gave him way more information than he probably wanted, and I probably made him very uncomfortable. And I should have just I know now how to do it better.
He became an atheist.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we have to be gentle with the priest. Although the older ones, man, they're as strong as oxes. They don't
exactly,
give a rat's. They tell me, let it go, buddy. Um,
exactly.
I still can't do as I'm getting hot under the collar here because I'm thinking of all those sins I haven't told. But anyway, I keep saying for these and all my other sins. So I'm very
Yeah.
sorry. Um, Tell us, in your opinion, what is Scripture, and how do you explain its significance to skeptics or just to anyone?
So, for my purposes, I look at it mostly on an evidentiary level. You don't have to accept it as divine if you're a skeptic, etc. But you should be. I think you should be looking at the evidence that authenticates it as driving back towards the apostles. That it really did come from the apostles and Jesus. And again, I get this mostly from these Protestant books on the case for Christ, but the entire drive is to show you that the Gospels, for example, are authentic eyewitness testimony, and that's why you should believe that Jesus really did raise from the dead. And looking at it that way is sort of how I define what the scriptures would be: is what did the apostles really teach? But as part of that, I realized as well that gets into a whole lot of fuzziness and additional questions, like what is a church? Who makes this decision? Is the decision eternal? Could the apostles have made mistakes, etc.? And answering those gets into the ultimate question of what church I would go to and why I ended up Catholic. Is that I think the answer has to be a church, and has to be that God, basically hasn't left. He has to be here somewhere giving us answers today, and that's done through the infallible magisterium of the church. But that's my view. I'm familiar with a lot of the Protestant writings on the other ways of getting an answer to that. Like I said, as far as my book goes, I leave it to others. But my conclusion was that it had to be the Catholic answer.
Mm. Um, I just want to ask you about, because we're talking. It's nice to talk to a Catholic and just to get another view to it. I always found that the church would have got involved in politics, and through history, it's never not got involved in politics. But in our lifetime, I see that, for example, when it pushes, almost aggression towards. If you look at Ukraine, there's the evil, bad people. They sort of follow a narrative from government sources, and I find that disturbing because they're there for our spiritual betterment, not for our political betterment. And then you look at things like climate change and stuff like that, which is, it's all very well saying the science is settled. It's not settled, and you might have some scientists who are saying one thing, and you got another bunch saying another thing. So it's something they should keep out of, in my opinion. What's your opinion? Do you think they should be involved in politics, or just stay inside the boundaries of the spiritual confinement or perimeter, but and not get involved in things such as wars? And you look at the Second World War, the church, it did at one stage let people down. So what's your opinions on that? Should they just shut up or be part of it?
I don't know that you can shut up, but I do wish there was a clearer distinction between, well, this is my opinion and this is the church speaking. And, there is, when you get down into the weeds of what is truly infallible, but that's a very rare circumstance. But you still have, we certainly had with the previous Pope, Pope Francis, an awful lot of comments that were, treated as if they were almost official when they were just his opinions, et cetera. And it's very unfortunate. My past life before I even became a lawyer, I was involved with economics. And so I was sort of obsessed with Pope Francis's views on economics. And ultimately, you kind of have to forgive him, as much as you want to strangle him. But what was he doing hiring a communist to write his papal speeches on economics? It just, and then he would get mad when people would say, well, you said something that was communist. And he would say, well, I'm not a communist. I fought communist. Well, that's very nice, but then don't hire a communist to write your speeches. Anyway, it's very, very frustrating, but nothing you can do. I'm always, doing all this reading into the history of the church and the way that I came to the church and stuff. There's a couple things I just sort of comfort myself with. One is that this is very old. St. Augustine had a saying that I really love, which is, there are wolves within and sheep without. There are good people on the outside and terrible people on the inside, and you just got to get used to it. And the other is as you were saying, the involvement in politics, the constant fighting. There's always two factions within the church, and there's always cycles, and things shift and go back and forth. And, just trust it'll all work out in the end. But it is frustrating watching it try to work itself out.
And from a lawyer's perspective too, you'd be thinking, oh, no, not this. Because sometimes it just doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah. No, and it's hard to defend it. You're out there fighting, arguments or discussions or whatever you're doing, try to persuade somebody, and then you almost feel like the church lets you down and stabs you in the back.
With all your research you did, what was, you could talk for hours on all the things that surprised you, but what was the most surprising out of all that research, the thing that went bang?
Well, to start, the initial surprise was that no one had done it. But I think in American baseball, it's like three outfielders standing around and watching the ball land in the middle. It just, nobody did it. So I assembled the research, and then as I'm looking through the research, I'm like, I want to say no one looked at it, but people do read the fathers all the time. They just didn't focus on this stuff and focus on an evidence. So my big example is just one night, I realized something, and just staring into space for like 12 hours of shock afterwards. But Protestants will tell you that there's a Jewish book called the Talmud. And in the Talmud, that is the earliest list that clearly matches the modern Jewish Protestant canon. And they will say, well, that list therefore extends backwards in time and shows you what was there at the time of Christ. And there's problems with that about timing, et cetera. People can argue that. But what I discovered as I was looking through things, that book didn't just give you a list of books that doesn't include the Catholic book 2 Maccabees. It actually plagiarized, as we would say, a story from 2 Maccabees and gave it to the Jews to believe going forward. So the story is the woman who has 7 sons, and they're all martyred. And 2 Maccabees is this incident with Antiochus back in the Greek era when the Greeks had conquered Jerusalem. The Jewish Talmud, hundreds of years later, as they're distancing themselves from that book and distancing themselves from the Christians, they developed a new story of a woman with 7 sons in the Roman Empire under different circumstances and inserted it into the Talmud. And to me, just as a lawyer, I cannot imagine a Protestant lawyer going to argue his case for Christianity and argue that he has the right Bible and, to say, well, we can trust this Talmud without knowing that that exists and not being able to at least explain something, give us some reason as to why we should still believe it. But in truth, I've not met a single person who knows what I'm talking about until I tell them. It's very easily verified. You could just Google "woman with 7 sons" and you'll find the different versions of the story. The Jews know that this happened. It's just that people don't realize how it connects back to the canon and back to the original question of what was Scripture to Jesus Christ. Anyway, it's just one of those things. Like to realize that this is out there and no one knows it was just such a shock.
I mean, and it's funny, the more we know, the more we don't know,
Yeah.
or realize we don't know, and it's true.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that happens in a space like this is that you'll read a book and you'll see it. Again, when I say that no one did this work or didn't really look at it, they'll give you 20 quotes. They'll take 20 quotes from the fathers and say, well, look at this. This is my evidence. There were thousands. But you look at the 20, it looks official, it looks scientific, it looks like a good list. That's not even remotely a small fraction, let alone all of them. But it's like I think in our modern world, we get this impression that we have so much more knowledge and understanding than we actually do. And it's amazing how rarely people follow up on things, simple Google or double checking or whatever. It just doesn't seem to occur.
Here's one for you. I'm enjoying this, so I apologise if I keep you here for too long. Here's one for you. Do you believe in miracles?
I do. And I actually have several in my own life that I sort of wonder about. They don't meet the Catholic standard of miracles. I'm not here to convince somebody else with my miracles, but they're miraculous enough to me to make me wonder. And, I've also met people. I know of a nun from my hometown, Mother Angelica, who founded the EWTN Catholic Network. She'll eventually be a saint in 100 years when all the politics is gone. But anyway, she would give the same answer as another nun that I know here in my town of Columbus, Ohio now. But both of them will say, well, why did you become a nun? Like, I was healed. What was I supposed to do? I was miraculously healed. It's easy for you to wonder if there's a God. Wait till you're miraculously healed. Then what are you going to do? So, yeah, I do believe in miracles. I feel like they probably happen more than people realize, but that we sort of, we just aren't mentally prepared to acknowledge what we're seeing, I think is what happens in the modern world.
I mean, I do. There was the latest one, I got to tell you, following this, I don't know if you have, in Canada, which is terrible. I mean, terrible at the moment for what the government wants to do what it is doing to its people. Now, but the hype and the jumping to health organisations with animals, and such as avian flu for the bird population. In Canada, there's this lady and husband, and they have huge ostrich farm. Now, I just came across this about 3 or 4 months ago, and I just follow it. And the Canadian government said, no, we've got to kill all these birds. And they said, they haven't got it. They don't fly. They're not going to transmit it. They're in this great enclosure. We use their eggs for study to work out maybe a cure or a vaccine or something for the avian flu for other birds and things like that. And this lady loves her ostriches, knows them all by name, and they there's a bonding there, and it's a very good bonding and a very good person. They had a prayer group, and they're all together and went through the process, and as this is the other day, and once it finished, they got a call from a lawyer saying there's been a stay, and it's going to the Supreme Court is now going to review it. But it was time had run out, and they were convinced it was a miracle, and it wasn't just good luck. There was intervention, if you believe in God, because what they were doing was such a good thing. There was nothing else but good. And I think, to me, that's a miracle. Got to be a bit careful when we say about miracles, but it's something that was an intervention, and it was a great intervention. And at this stage, everybody has come out on top, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm saying with the things in my own life is, I'm not here to tell anybody else that what happened with the ostriches or what happened in my life is a true miracle and, convince somebody else sense. But it just seems like God's out there and intervening a little bit more than people realize, since I think that we have those stories, we see those things in our own lives, and you just, you see them differently once you're on the other side.
You do, and what do they say? Praise be to the Lord.
Yeah,
but it's funny, and I normally keep religion. I sometimes refer to it, but I keep religion out of the broadcast, and I can't keep the politics out because I am human. But to have a conversation with you it's truly illuminating, and I do appreciate it. If somebody wants to get hold of your book and get hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, in Australia, I do know it is available on Amazon. In addition, you might be able to buy it through my website. There is a company that I think ships around the world, CanonCrossfire.com. So,
because we are global, this goes to the UK, and we have a large number of UK audience. So, best thing, go to Amazon, not because of Jeff Bezos. He's not not like Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
But I think upstairs he'll understand what I mean. But a great facility to sell books. And,
exactly.
Yeah,
I wish they were more pro selling books, to be honest. But it is amazing. Somewhat like Twitter and YouTube, they're not a good company. But I got to use them. So
that's right. They're not a good company at all. But it's what do they say? It's better the devil you know, which I don't know about that one. Matthew McWhorter, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, sir.
Author of Canon Crossfire. I would love to do this again some other time because it's a lovely conversation, and I think it's there's many takeaways. For me, it's just having sort of a reaffirmation of what I'm doing in life, and sort of makes me feel good. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much. This is The World Today.
It can all be over in the blink of an eye. Driving tired kills.
Sometimes life can be overwhelming, and suicide may seem like the only way to relieve the pain. Beyond Now is an evidence-based app created by Beyond Blue to help you cope when suicidal thoughts start to appear. You can use it to create an easy-to-follow plan that is personal to you and includes steps like know your warning signs so you can act early, make your environment safe by removing harmful items, activities you can do or people you can be with to distract yourself from suicidal thoughts, reminders of things that make you feel strong. Some of these steps might be tough to fill out, and that's okay. It can be helpful to make or share your safety plan with a trusted friend, family member, or mental health professional. You might feel like you're alone, but help is available. If you're worried you can't stay safe, use the red telephone icon to call your emergency contacts. Download the free Beyond Now app today to create your personal safety plan.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
Okay, now Hillary Clinton, after having a lovely conversation about Christianity, I have to be a little bit careful. He will understand. She warns against the rise of Christianity and says white Christian men are causing such damage. She's a nut. And such damage to the US. Cam, if you could play Hillary Clinton.
We haven't gotten to the more perfect union, and we fought a civil war over part of it. And people have been protesting, for hundreds of years that, things were not as they should be, given our ideals and how we should be moving toward them. So I think that's what makes us so special as a country. And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, is just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, bumps along the way, but I agree with you, we were on the right trajectory.
Let me. I wonder what Jeffrey Epstein thinks at this stage. We'll never know. Okay, now we used to have Joe Biden as president. He didn't know that, and we didn't respect that. However, Joe Biden said it's just Antifa is just a feeling. It's not really an organisation. Donald Trump, he's just done something magnificent to this feeling called Antifa. Cam, if you could play Antifa Trump.
They're anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess, I probably know them. And you wouldn't know it. You're at dinner with them, everything's nice, and then you find out that they funded millions of dollars to these lunatics. Steve, could you say a couple of words?
Yes, Mr. President. This is a very historic and significant day. This is the first time in American history that there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, to dismantle Antifa, to dismantle the organizations that have been carrying out these acts of political violence and terrorism. What we have seen, if you look at whether it be going back to the riots that started with Black Lives Matter and all the way through to the Antifa riots, the attacks on ICE officers, the doxing campaigns, and now the political assassinations, these are not lone, isolated events. This is part of an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. It is structured, it is sophisticated, it is well-funded, it is well-planned. There is really no parallel like this to anything else in the country right now. There is an entire system of feeder organizations that provide money, resources, weapons, and when they're attacking ICE officers, they're attacking federal buildings, or they're isolating public officials for harassment, doxing, intimidation, and ultimately attempted assassination. It is all carefully planned, executed, and thought through. It is terrorism on our soil. Because of this executive order, Cash and Pam are going to have the tools they need, working with Scott, to take these organizations apart piece by piece. And the central hub of that effort is going to be the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF, which sits inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But for those at home who are worried about terrorism in this country, they need to understand, because of President Trump's strength, because of his vision, because of his leadership, we are now going to use the entire force of the federal government to uproot these organizations root and branch. And again, that's only possible because of President Trump and his leadership.
Thank you, Steve. Cash, please.
So there you are, Antifa. Some say Antifa, but it's Antifa. Good on you, Donald. Now, before we actually have here a clip which has been sent through, Donald Trump talking about running for the next term. So we have that here. I've just uploaded it. It's fresh, hot off the press. So we'll just do this one. We'll come back to the Donald Trump giving a wild hint that he will be running again as president. So don't go away, please. And now TikTok. We talked about hypocrites before, but okay, TikTok. China has it, or had it, collecting this information about everybody. We got all the information. We could use it for commercial purposes. Can't use it to attack you because we're not going to go after each one individually. But we have all that data on everybody. China is going to use it to make themselves even greater. Make China great again. Well, they've sold it to the Israelis, led by, he's an Israel-aligned billionaire, a guy called Larry Ellison. He's the largest individual donor to the Israeli Defense Force. There you are. So, and Donald Trump says, I'm sorry, Donald, you're off point here. He says, TikTok will be retrained. Well, he's right in one way, but not from our point of view. It'd be from, I would think, if you have this led by Larry Ellison, the largest individual donor to the IDF. You think, yes, it will be retrained. It's going to be retrained to suit Israel. So this is what I see, and forgive me if I'm wrong. The Chinese were collecting this data, and sure they had data on anybody that used it. But they were going to use it at this stage because we hear all the scuttlebutt about China going to take over the world, bomb, 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 bomb. Not happening at the moment, at least. And so what we have is the information and data will be used by Israel. Shock horror. But they have that back door to it. Or not back door, they have the front door to it. They can get whatever they want. But guess what happens to people who Israel don't like? I wonder. Just think. So anyway. So, Cam, if you could play, this is an old interview, right back, I think, it goes back 10 years, more, 12 years ago. This is an interview with Larry Ellison, the leader of the pack that has taken over TikTok. It's called TikTok, Cam.
Tell us, what is your connection to Israel?
Well, the renewal of the Jewish state is something that I think touches all of us. For 2,000 years, we were a stateless people. And now we have a country of our own, defended by all the brave men and women of the IDF. So anything we can do to support them who devote their lives for preserving the state of Israel, keeping the people safe, and allowing our state to continue sometimes in very, very difficult situations.
Did you visit Israel?
I have been to Israel. I have been to the border. I have spent time to the people who govern the state of Israel. And I feel a deep emotional connection to the state of Israel and the Israeli people.
You are an high-tech person. What do you think about Israeli startups and high-tech phenomena?
Oh, well, after Silicon Valley, there's an area, Herzliya has probably got more startups than any other place other than Silicon Valley in Northern California. So we've actually acquired a number of Israeli companies. We have two CEOs at Oracle. One's name is Safra Katz, and she was born in Israel. So again, we love the country of Israel, and we'll do everything we can to support the country of Israel.
We recently hear that many people criticizing Israel, especially after the Gaza operation. How do you feel as someone just saying you love Israel so much?
Well, again, it's a difficult situation, isn't it? To conduct military operations around civilians is very difficult, and of course, there were tragedies, and civilians were hurt. That's a terrible thing. But one thing we know for certain, that the Israeli army did everything they could to minimize civilian casualties. And in that regard, they've done a much better job than a lot of other armies all over the world throughout history.
Yep, we have clearance. Yeah, I know. Lawyers, everything. Goodbye. Oh, that was just our lawyer. Concerned about the next clip because we are the first in the world. This is Donald Trump. The biggest hint he's ever had about running again. Would be probably the first president to run 3 terms. Cam, We have had this cleared, by the way. Yeah, it wasn't stolen. This is true. Cam, if you could play, wait for it, next term.
Send that to Dave. I swear to God. We love you, Mr. Trump. Oh my God.
We're going to do so much for the women, you have no idea. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be truly amazing. So many patriots here in Connecticut. We love Connecticut. But we never won this state, I don't think. I think it's blue. I think it's blue. But
yes,
next time in 2028 when I'm president, it's going to be red then. I don't know.
Oh, my God.
We're looking into it very strongly. And if anybody don't like me in Connecticut, they're going to get the Johnson & Johnson. It's made out of Trump blood and Clorox. It really don't work, but it makes you keep your job. Unbelievable.
Oh, my God.
All right, let's...
All right, I'm a bad person. I'm going to go to hell. All right, but I thought it was funny. I saw that and I thought, all I had to say was, it's to blame, it's to blame. I mean, that was just brilliant. So that's not Donald Trump, by the way. He's not that tall. And he hasn't got that much hair. You notice it's like, we used to just brush it across. Now it's like that, just so that it covers it up. He needs to have a crew cut. That's what I think. You know, show the world that you haven't got hair, the orange man. Anyway, that's it. A great show. Thank you very much for your company. I appreciate it. And a big one too coming up. If you're on YouTube or Rumble, you'll see that we have the Country Telegraph, which is growing quite nicely. And then after that, back to the UK for the World Today, talking about all issues, along with the UK, including Europe, and parts at times with Australia. So some good shows coming up. Thank you once again. Have a great day. This is The World Today.